Jane Austen sells. It's a fact, a truth universally acknowledged, if you will. She sells books, obviously, 6 novels and a bunch of half-finished extra stuff. There's new editions of these books coming out all the time. Paperbacks, hardbacks, collector's editions, fancy ones and eye-catching ones. Editions to appeal to pretentious dinner party types and editions to appeal to teenagers on TikTok. Jane Austen sells cinema tickets and streaming subscriptions, with a new Pride and Prejudice miniseries in the works for Netflix and a cinematic re-release of the 2005 movie to celebrate its 20th anniversary. But Jane Austen also sells merchandise, mugs and cushions and tea towels. So many tea towels, even I've got one. Gifted to me by my mother-in-law, isn't it adorable? Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and let's talk about tat. The tea towel isn't the only piece of Austen-themed tat I own. There's also this tote bag, which again my mother-in-law gifted me. Pride and Prejudice. Get it? Like Pride and Prejudice, but with cats. Sorry about this stain, I don't know where it came from and I can't get rid of it. There's also this t-shirt, which is from my own merch store, link down below. This is also Pride and Prejudice, but with cats. I do love a theme. I've had this one for years, but sadly can't wear it out anymore since my own cat decided to stab a hole through it. For authenticity's sake, I suppose. My point is, if you have a Janeite in your life, you will never run out of Christmas gift ideas. From bookmarks to teapots, the possibilities are endless with or without the addition of cats. The range of Austen-themed merchandise goes from the small and subtle to the big and bold. For every taste and budget, you can get a cushion with Colin Firth's face on it. You can get a t-shirt with Colin Firth's face on it. You can get a mug with Colin Firth's face on it. You can spend pocket change on a bookmark or £1,600 on a life-size bust of Jane Austen cast in plaster. I recently found myself in Bath, the world capital of Austen-themed tat. It's home to the Jane Austen Centre, which I'll talk about in just a minute, as well as a plethora of other tourist destinations. Bath is a beautiful city and I'm not surprised that it's popular with tourists from all over the world. Most of these tourists aren't there for Jane Austen though. Bath is a Georgian spa town built on top of a Roman spa town. There's a lot of culture and a lot of history, just a lot to see and do. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is going to the actual spa there. No offense to the British, some of my best friends are British, but they don't know how to spa. When you take a closer look at the souvenir shops, you'll notice a bit of a theme. Right there, next to the Union Jacks and red foam boxes and the Queen Elizabeth bobbleheads, you'll see this lady popping up again and again and again. Though to be honest, I was expecting the Jane Austen merchandise to be much more in your face. It is, for the most part, restricted to souvenir shops and of course to bookshops, which have dedicated Jane Austen shelves and display tables. The heart of Bath's Austen-themed tourist industry is without a doubt the Jane Austen Centre on Gay Street. It's a weird mix between a Regency museum and a sort of Janeite Disneyland. Entirely staffed by very enthusiastic actors in not entirely accurate period dress. When I was there, the tour guide was Isabella Thorpe while John Willoughby worked the till in the gift shop. It's fun, it's camp, it's a bit overpriced for what you get, which is quite a small exhibition of historical items, side by side with real props from various Austen movie and TV adaptations. And that's another clue about what the modern commercialization of Jane Austen means in real terms. A blurring of the lines between history and fiction, between primary sources and modern interpretation. The Jane Austen Centre exhibits objects from adaptations of Jane Austen's work, film and TV shows, alongside real historical artifacts and reproductions. And don't get me wrong, everything is perfectly labelled. You're not going to walk in there and think that this is an authentic Regency dress, but this mixing of canons, of realities, gives us a clue as to what Jane Austen pop culture is all about. It's not just the books Jane Austen wrote, it's not just the adaptations, it's not just her actual real life, which in itself has become the subject of books and films. It's not the Regency and all of the notions are accurate or not that we have about it. It's all of these things combined. That's what makes up what has been described online as the Jane Austen industrial complex. In 2022, Alison Wilmore wrote an article for Vulture with the title "Is Jane Austen Just a Vibe Now?", in which she quite rightly tears apart the dreadful film adaptation of Persuasion released on Netflix that year. This is what she writes. Austen is reduced to just a vibe, to bonnets, walks in the countryside, sessions of piano playing in the parlour, a vague sense of a stuffy British accent. It's not the desire to sex things up that's frustrating. What irks is the removal of the urgency underneath all these mannered traditions and manoeuvres, involving social standing, the desperate need to fall in, of course, sincere love with someone who coincidentally possesses the fortune necessary to support one's family. It's not an entirely accurate assessment of the film, which seems to be set in an alternate regency entirely without bonnets, but don't even get me started on that. It's undeniable that Jane Austen as pop culture is not the same as Jane Austen as literature. The books are what they are. They're complex and beautiful and funny and sometimes badly paced, sorry Sense and Sensibility. And I don't think there is a Jane Austen fan out there who doesn't love them. But the Jane Austen industrial complex, the thing that sells tea towels and little I Heart Darcy pins, that's almost entirely built on the ecosystem that sprung up around these books. The adaptations, the retellings, the fandom. And the fandom itself sprouts more and more content every year. You watching this video right now and me making this video right now, we're part of that. I love talking about Jane Austen on this channel. I love to talk about the books, sure, but I also love to talk about the pop culture. I like to talk about all the Austen things that aren't the books. It's a self-perpetuating cycle of creation and consumption that we can't escape, and this is my life now. It's impressive how many things Jane Austen sells that barely even connect to the stories she wrote. For example, this book with the title Jane Austen Embroidery. This was co-written by Jenny Batchelor, who's been researching women's history for years and has written about it extensively in her academic work. If anyone knows about embroidery in Jane Austen's time, it's her. But this book is not about Jane Austen. This might as well be called Regency Embroidery, except then I wouldn't have bought it. Jane Austen is the hook, the keyword that makes you and me pick this book over any other on historical needlework. It worked on me. I mean, I bought it and I don't even know what this is for. We see this hook used over and over again in the Jane Austen industrial complex. Tea with Jane Austen, dinner with Jane Austen, dinner with Mr. Darcy, all written by the same author. Who wouldn't want to go to dinner with Mr. Darcy, am I right, ladies? Cookbooks, papercraft books, books about gardening, interior design and crochet, any craft, art and hobby imaginable has sold by the power of Jane Austen's name on the cover. I'm doing the exact thing right now. I trapped you into watching a video about consumerism by slapping Jane Austen's face on the thumbnail. When I went to Bath, I spent a lot of time at the Jane Austen Centre gift shop, despite it being tiny and absolutely packed with people. I was fascinated by the things on display. There was the usual books and mugs and tote bags, but also some unexpected items, such as this Jane Austen themed AirPods case and this Mr. Darcy rubber duck. I ended up walking away with 2 Jane Austen themed games, a board game and a trivia game, as well as a tote bag for my mother-in-law, because we mainly communicate via Jane Austen merchandise these days. But I was tempted by so much more, such as these tacky but cute Christmas tree ornaments, or these replica of jewelry worn in various TV and film adaptations. Gorgeous, but so out of budget. What appeals to us about buying and, more importantly, displaying merchandise? The obvious answer is we love these books and we want to show that. There's a tiny thrill in wearing a reference to something and then that reference being recognized by others. Tiny tangent here, but I need to show you my scarf. This was gifted to me over a decade ago by, can you guess who? Yes, my mother-in-law is amazing. Shout out to Carolyn. She knitted this herself, and since I've owned this is the only scarf I ever wear in the winter. The nerds among you will recognize this from long-running British science fiction show Doctor Who. I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who, hence the scarf. When I lived in the UK, this was recognised as a Doctor Who scarf on a regular basis. Not necessarily by fellow Whovians, but simply because Doctor Who, and by extension this scarf, are such a major part of British pop culture that even someone who's never seen the show will recognise this for what it is. Now I live in Germany, I still get a lot of compliments on this scarf because it is beautiful, but when I tell people that this is based on a scarf worn by an alien on a TV show in the 1970s, I get blank stares. Though to be fair, blank stares are pretty much the default mode for Germans. Back to Jane Austen. If you wear your obstinate headstrong girl t-shirt out in public, you'll get two types of reactions. People who recognize the quote from Pride and Prejudice and therefore instant best friends, or people who don't. The people who don't might think it's funny or cute or ask you what the quote is from, therefore also instant best friends. Some Austen pop culture content is more recognizable than others. The truth universally acknowledged, for example, or Colin Firth in a wet shirt. Since Jane Austen is on the £10 note, the quote, "I declare after all there is no enjoyment like reading," might have become more recognizable as well. However obscure or not the reference on the merchandise you're wearing, you're signaling to the world that you love something. That's the purpose of merchandise at its core. You're saying, look at me. I have hobbies, I have passions, I have culture. What I find more interesting is the existence of merchandise that doesn't loudly proclaim your love for a piece of literature. Like this Pemberley themed perfume. No one's going to go up to you, take a good sniff and then go, "Oh, this smells just like that fictional rich boy's fictional house in that book you like." If you buy this, you do it because it brings you joy to wear something that reminds you of a literary favourite. I have to say that this is the sort of thing that really appeals to me. Themed perfume or loose leaf tea, you know what I mean. It's like a little secret thing. It's meaningless to anyone else that the scented candle I'm lighting is inspired by Anne Elliot's visit to Lyme Regis, but it gives me a tiny thrill when I smell the sea salt and firewood that I imagine the candle maker will have included in its scent profile. Damn, now I really want that candle. So I added this bit to the video script and then I googled to see if such a candle actually exists, and it does, with notes of ocean air, sandalwood and second chances according to the description. Yours for only $25 on Etsy. We maybe need to be a tiny bit careful that we don't lose sight of what's at the center of all of this merchandise. Jane Austen's books. I try not to be a snob about these things because honestly we do not need more snobs in this world. If you can tell from this video, I'm broadly in favour of the Jane Austen industrial complex. Anything that makes classic literature more fun, more approachable and less scary is a good thing. And this video is too short to go into what that means for the capitalist machine feeding our empty souls through the means of unbridled consumerism. I love that this Jane Austen fandom is so open and friendly and relaxed compared to other literary spaces, both online and offline. But even we've got snobs. I couldn't believe the backlash I saw when Penguin unveiled their new set of Jane Austen book covers, which are clearly meant to appeal to younger readers. No, what I mean when I say we have to be careful that we don't lose sight of the books is that we've embraced them so much as part of our modern pop culture that it can warp our understanding of history, of the time in which these books were actually written. While I was in Bath, I had the chance to see Lucy Worsley give a talk and Q&A session about Jane Austen. Lucy Worsley, best known for her TV appearances and BBC documentaries on history, has also written a best-selling biography of Jane Austen. This one. I haven't read it yet at the time of recording, but a lot of people really like it. Anyway, she gave a presentation about this in Bath to a sold-out theatre. She's a fantastic public speaker and clearly extremely knowledgeable about Jane Austen's life. But there was one thing she said that made me a bit uncomfortable. She talked about Jane Austen as a sort of modern feminist, a woman who, through her writing, changed the lives of women today. She talked about Jane Austen getting drunk at parties and flirting with men at balls and stoutly refusing to marry in order to pursue her career as an independent writer. Jane Austen changed the world of literature, there's no doubt about that. She was groundbreaking in her writing style. No one wrote like her at the time. But she was not a feminist radical by any means. Lucy Worsley acknowledged that when I had the chance to ask a question in the Q&A section. I wanted to know how the perception of Jane Austen had changed over the years that Lucy Worsley had been studying her life. Worsley talked about how her own interpretation of Jane Austen as a barriers-breaking feminist is very much influenced by our modern times. She talked about how the Victorians, for example, had an entirely different understanding of Austen, coloured by their own politics and morality, their own pop culture if you want. Lucy Worsley is an excellent historian. She's well aware that history isn't just facts and numbers, kings and queens and wars. It's about how we today see the past, and the way that she, and by extension we, her audience, see Jane Austen is heavily influenced by what we want to see in her. This girl bossification is something we see in merchandise as well. Obstinate, headstrong girl is printed on t-shirts and coffee mugs as if that line wasn't meant as an insult in Pride and Prejudice. And that's fine, it's fun, it's a bit cheeky, just like "what are men to rocks and mountains," another phrase from Pride and Prejudice we happily misinterpret because it's cute. On the whole, I'm in favour of all of this, of taking Jane Austen and turning her work into pop culture. It just shows how much her novels still speak to us in the 21st century, that we share memes and we wear her quotes on t-shirts. Somewhat paradoxically, Jane Austen is also the first and often the only thing we think about when we hear the word Regency. We think of her novels and we think of the things that happen in her novels. Balls and weddings and witty banter on country estates. But Jane Austen's books are not representative of what society was like in her time. She wrote about the genteel classes, a tiny, tiny sliver of the population. The only book where we get a glimpse of not even the working class, but rather the lower end of the middle class, is Mansfield Park. While Jane Austen's heroines are trying to get married to avoid the horrors of having to become a governess, most women who were alive at the time had much more serious things to worry about. And I'm not saying you can't enjoy a good Pride and Prejudice meme without holding a minute's silence for all the Regency people who died in childbirth or war or workplace accidents. But it is weird how our perception of a whole era of history is influenced by this Jane Austen pop culture. Why is it that we think ballrooms and bonnets when we hear Regency, but orphans and workhouses when we hear Victorians? I blame Dickens. But the Industrial Revolution was in full swing at the turn of the 19th century when Jane Austen wrote her books. Textile mills and coal mines were taking over the country. People swarmed to the cities in search for work, and we're starting to see the railways expand after the introduction of the steam locomotive. None of these feature in Jane Austen's novels, and that's fine. She wrote about a very specific subset of society with a very specific lifestyle. We just need to remember that her books are not representative of a whole era in history. I love a bit of Austen merch, a bit of Austen pop culture. And I fully believe that a bit of historical misrepresentation is a small price to pay if that means we don't have to deal with snobs and gatekeepers. If bonding over sassy quotes and thirsting over 1990s Colin Firth makes people get into Jane Austen, then have at it. Who cares if someone wears their I Heart Darcy pin based entirely on the 2005 movie adaptation? Because I can guarantee that anyone who spends enough time enjoying Jane Austen pop culture will sooner or later read her books. And then, my friends, we've got them. Make classics fun again. I should put that on a hat and sell it. Thank you for watching. Bye.